Hello, welcome to the Aragon Analytics review of the Spyderco Military in S110V steel. To get things started, let's get the technical stuff out of the way. Overall length of the knife open is 9.52 inches, closed 5.52 inches. Blade thickness is 0.145 inches, 3.7 millimeters. Sorry, I'm just kind of reading off of the Spyderco website here. Blade length is 4 inches. Steel is S110V. Weight is 4.3 ounces. Handles are made out of G10. And we'll get to the more interesting stuff here in a second, folks. The S110V steel that's used in the blade is one of Crucible's particle metallurgy steel. Uses a high content of vanadium and niobium, which is supposed to give the blade a high degree of wear resistance, and the high degree of chromium is supposed to give it a good bit of corrosion and stain resistance. When you pick up the knife for the first time, what I sort of noticed is that initially it feels a bit cheap. If you're used to carrying a larger blade like I am, with G10 and full stainless steel skeletonized liners, it feels a bit light. Light is a good thing provided that the strength is there, but I gotta say it took me a little bit to get used to the lightness of this knife. One of the things I noticed also off the bat is that the blade centering was not exactly perfect. I did take the knife apart, which voids Spyderco's warranty, I know. But I did take the knife apart because it was not quite banging onto the G10 liner or the G10 handle scale, but it was close, and I've been able to get it somewhat close to centered, but not quite. So that's one ding. The other ding is that Spyderco always uses an incredible amount of Loctite. So if you do ever have to take one of these things apart, use a quality Torx driver and use a lot of caution, because these screws are relatively soft. I don't think they're particularly well heat treated screws, and they are prone to strip out, and I think that's by design. I don't think Spyderco wants us taking their knives apart. The clip, this is kind of another ding for some people, but it's positive for me. The clip is for tip down right hand carry only. Now, being that I plan to carry this knife right hand and that I'm a tip down right hand kind of guy, absolutely zero problem for me, but for you that might be a bit of an issue. The clip itself is extremely well made, has an appropriate amount of tension, not too much, slips in and out, slips into the pocket and out of the pocket well, but it has a good degree of retention. And this particular clip, I really wish that Spyderco would do these with all of their clips. It's not paint and it's not Cerakote or anything like that. It's almost like, the closest I can describe it would be like a semi-buffed out Parkerized finish, or a nitrided finish. And you can see a little bit of pocket wear on it, but I really like the look of this, and I like the feel of it, and I have a feeling it's going to be very robust and long lasting. The G10 is extremely grippy without being abrasive. I'd call that, to my way of thinking, just excellent execution of G10. Not a big fan of the blue color. I like to keep things simple. Black G10 or carbon fiber would have been my choice, but what the heck. Has that nice pillar construction, so it's easy to clean the knife out without taking it apart. All of this is nothing new to you Spyderco military fans, but for those of you who are not that familiar with the brand or the model, this is this particular design, not so much this particular model. It's like a benchmark tactical folding knife. Now, as far as deployment, I would rate it as excellent. The blade, when you go to deploy it, just rockets out of the handle. Of course, on camera, I'm going to screw that up. But as you deploy it properly, it just takes the slightest wrist flick and the slightest flick of your thumb, and the blade comes out nicely. It has a nice detent. I managed to carry this in my back pocket for a couple of weeks now to kind of evaluate it. I managed to do that without slicing my ass cheek off with it, so that's nice. So retention, the detent is very good. I mean, you can eventually shake it out if you try hard enough, but I would say that detent is right in that sweet spot between retention and deployment. The lockup on this thing, I was initially a little concerned because I was going from carrying a Spyderco Tatanka, which has their power lock. The lock mechanism here didn't look particularly robust, but I gotta say, there is zero up and down movement and absolutely zero side to side. There is no play. As you can see, the lockup is at a third. The knife, to my way of thinking, is not even totally broken in yet, but it is squared away. It really is. This liner lock, which is part of the nested partial steel liners in there, I can't imagine this not having enough strength to do whatever you might need it to do. So deployment's excellent, retention's excellent, clip is excellent if you don't mind the tip down carry. There is no provision on any other corners. If you can live with that, overall, so far so good. Not thrilled about the blue color. Onto the steel. This is one of those new Wonder Miracle steels, or the S110V. It's something that a lot of people just were begging for Spyderco to make a paramilitary and military out of. In use, it is about as tough to sharpen as S90V. Maybe, to my way of thinking, I don't know if it's because of the heat treat that Spyderco uses. To me, it was a little easier to sharpen than S90V, and it took a finer edge than S90V. With that being said, I do the majority of my sharpening on a Ken Onion Work Sharp sharpener. Now, before all you Wicked Edge guys and Edge Pro guys or whatever, start stomping your feet about how superior. Yes, I will acknowledge the Wicked Edge is probably a superior sharpening system, but in order to get the kind of edge that I want, I'm not willing to spend $1,400 on a professional sharpening system. End of discussion. The Ken Onion Work Sharp is capable of putting a smooth, shaving, sharp edge on just about anything, and it did do it on this knife. The difference with this S110V, and for the life of me I cannot understand why it's the case, I went through the belts from coarse to fine to sharpen to hone, and then onto a polishing belt, and usually that is enough to put a just crazy sick sharp edge on something. And I found that the blade was getting sharper as I went through the coarseness of the belts, and then when I kept going through the honing belt, usually what I'll do is I'll run it through the honing belt 2 to 3 times the recommended amount, and it just gets a finer and finer edge. This blade responded, instead of by getting sharper and sharper, it just started dulling the blade. So I can't explain why it's the case, but what I ended up doing after running through the belts 3 times and it resulting in, okay, it's getting sharper, and then all of a sudden, now it's getting more dull. What I ended up doing was just taking it through the belts one more time, being very careful to maintain a consistent angle as you run through both sides, and then I ran it just a couple of times with a coarse belt and then a couple of times with a honing belt. And what that did was it kind of put a micro fine micro toothy edge on this thing, and then the honing belt just kind of straightened that out without buffing it out or dulling it. And what resulted is, I mean, it will shave no problem. As you can see, that's taking the hair off absolutely no problem. But it's not like a really smooth shaving edge. And as far as, you know, like catalog paper, you know, you can do the S-cuts. I mean, I wish you were here to feel how smooth that cut is. But you can see the ability to change directions and curve, no problem. So that's that really thin catalog paper. It's pretty much the same deal. Newsprint is a little harder to do. Let's see if I can get this in camera without screwing it up. But, you know, same deal with newsprint. Can still do the curves. So it did take a fine edge, but it takes a coarse belt to get a fine edge with this steel. Doesn't make sense to me either, folks, but that's just seems to be the way that it is. I don't know if it's because of the niobium carbides and vanadium carbides or what, but it just seems like this knife prefers to have like a micro toothy edge on it. And as far as edge retention, you know, I did do a little bit of abusive crap. You can see some abrasions on the blade. The lock mechanism held up extremely well, and the edge seems to be holding a little bit better than the S90V. My experience with S90V in a nutshell is that it's a pain in the balls to sharpen, excuse my French. It really is a pain to sharpen. You cannot get that mirror polished edge for the life of you, at least I haven't been able to. And it seems like S90V is like the worst of both worlds. It's next to impossible to get a really fine edge on it, and then it loses that fine edge very quickly, and then you end up with like this toothy, rough, semi-sharp edge that will last forever. Well, I don't want a semi-sharp edge that'll last forever. I want, you know, the best edge I can put on it that'll last a relatively good amount of time. So jury's still out on the S110V. As far as I'm concerned, maybe I'll do an update video later on. But as far as, you know, ergonomics, lockup, you know, deployment, build quality, quality control with the possible exception of the blade centering when I initially got it. It's an excellent knife, folks, and I think it's well worth the $170 some dollars. You know, it's in the 170-ish range online. I'll give the knife a full recommend. It's, you know, in my system, it is the primary tactical blade. I'm trying to find a replacement for the Tatanka that's an American-made high-quality steel in a good tactical package, and you know, so far this is you know, fitting that bill. I'll reserve final judgment until I have a chance to test this blade more for chipping and everything else. You know, whenever you have a high hardness steel, you worry about chipping, especially toughness and flexibility is much more important in a tactical blade than hardness is. So we'll see how this works, but for right now, this is a recommend. So thanks again for coming by to take a look at this gear and evaluate it with me, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.